Teacher is closing the door.
Yes, exactly.
At school.
Yes, like at school.
So next one was late.
We are, I think, ready. This normally. Okay, so I think we are ready to begin. I want to welcome you all to the last Science Café of 2019. We have a Science Café topic that is a little bit a continuation, not a continuation, but definitely connected to the previous one that was on global climate change. And also it's a little bit different because we were very lucky and we are pleased to have here Juha Poikola, who comes, however, from a company, not really from the university, directly from university research. And we hope to have more and more also contributions from companies. And I have to say also that, Juha just told me that he would encourage you to ask questions also during his talk,
yes,
so that it may become more a discussion rather than 40 minutes of listening to talk and then the questions and answers. Of course, that's also okay, but please do stop him and ask him questions even during the presentation. That's everything I have to say, and I will give the word now to our speaker, thanking him already now for his availability.
Thank you, Professor. It's very nice to be here. Good evening, everybody.
That's right, I have a double. It's nice to be here. So, my name is Juha Poikola. I work for TVO, nuclear power company, who is operating in Olkiluoto, which is close to Rauma. My job is the stakeholder relations, so I do work a lot with different stakeholders. Maybe the most important ones are the politicians, because if you think of energy and if you think of climate change, it's all about politics. So I follow very closely to the energy policy, but of course there are lots of other stakeholders that we involve. Universities are very important, and especially here in the West Coast, there's lots of companies investing and lots of jobs available. So education is very important. We have been asking for more technical education here in the West Coast, and I think there is a engineering education starting here at the University of Turku, so which is good. Okay, let me start. The business I'm working in it's actually very fun. The power business is good. I'm happy to be in this business, and one of the reasons it's very responsible. Finland is very good in this. If you think of the sustainability and climate change, so here's the first fact why we have succeeded quite well is we have been able to reduce the emissions in Finland in power sector. So now I talk about electricity. When you talk about energy, you need to always divide electricity and the energy. Energy is there's more in it, and it's more challenging to move to clean energy. But in the power sector, we are now on the level of, if you talk emissions totally, it's about 5 million tons per year. And in Finland, and the total emissions in Finland are 55 million tons per year. So we are still polluting, but not that much. So the trend is good. But actually the electricity is the easiest part if you think of climate change. So if you want to clean the electricity, so that's easy and not very expensive. But then when you go to heating and traffic and food, for example, then you run into much more difficulties, and you need to put much more effort and money to solve those questions. The second thing why it's so fun to work especially in the nuclear industry, that there's a major change if you look at the long history, so the acceptability of nuclear power is quite high today. So you can see it from the graph that if you want to change people's opinions, it takes a lot of time. It doesn't happen quickly. We are making the same question from the public from year 2082, so it's quite valid information. Same question repeated every year. And as you can see, the change in our opinions happens about 1% unit per year on average, if things go normally. But if something happens, of course, you lose your reputation quite quickly. And we know in this industry we have lost our reputation dramatically. In 1986 was the Chernobyl. And you can see it from the graph that it was a very dramatic. And now Chernobyl is again, it's back in the news because the HBO Chernobyl series is now the most popular TV series in the world. If you have not seen it, I suggest that you do it. Of course, it's very emotional and there's dramatic characters there which are not really true, but the technical things in the HBO Chernobyl is quite close to reality. Yes, please.
In 2011, there was a little bit of a dip, presumably Fukushima.
Fukushima was, yes.
But it didn't seem to have that much.
Yes. Well, the reason is that it was, of course, it was bad for nuclear, but the results were not. Basically, nobody died because of radiation. The emissions in Chernobyl were much higher to the environment. There were emissions in Fukushima, but much less. And of course, it was a bit far away. If you look at the Finnish perspective, so the impact was there, but not that big. But then, when you come to these last 2 years, that's a historical change in the acceptance. And that's, of course, the awareness of climate change. We see it's only 2 years that the climate change really had hit the media, and people are really receiving that. Because within the industry, we have been knowing this for decades, but now we can see the change in the people's behavior and people's attitudes, which is very good. Of course, we expect much more actions. I go to more detailed that the actions are not nearly what we need to do, but anyway, now it's much more easy to.
Can you say what is the reliability of these curves if there are 2,000 people involved?
Yes, as we saw this, we use this TSN Gallup, which is widely used in the Finnish Gallups. So you need, if it's a simple question like that, you need 1,000 answers, and then the reliability is high enough. But I don't even remember the reliance in percentage, that plus minus what is it? Yes, but quite often you can find reasons for changes, and these changes are obvious. For example, if you follow YLA, the Finnish broadcasting company, they started to talk about climate change, and actually they talk about nuclear power much more than earlier. It used to be the discussion around renewables, years and years, and nuclear was not really at the media. And now it's it's there. There are more. There are so many people that now are bringing the nuclear and making the statements. These opinion leaders. Well, this is just 2 days ago, so I took it with me. We have a new prime minister, as you all know. So she was not favoring nuclear power earlier years. But now when she went to Europe, to Brussels, welcome, welcome. Hello, welcome. Sorry, it's in Finnish, because it's a direct quote. I didn't translate it, but the Prime Minister is stating here that it's nuclear power is one of the central sources of energy in Europe, right? And then he uses the word sustainable. He puts it that if in the climate content it's sustainable, and that's an important word today and in the near future. Sustainability. I will go into that more. And he also stated the current government's opinion. So we have this kind of opinion leaders openly saying that nuclear is yes. So it didn't happen a few years ago. So in that sense, keeping on the topic of sustainability. So just a practical proof that it's sustainable. So this is the site where we produce electricity. Now we are just about to start the third reactor there, right? In that small area over there, we will produce 30% of the Finnish electricity in the future. 30%. We've been in the island for 50 years. And what's the impact to the environment? What is the impact for us being there for 50 years? Well, there's one impact, which is that we heat the water there, we put some cooling water to the sea. That's the impact of our operations, nothing else in practice. It's a very, actually there's lots of nature conservation areas there. In front of the power plant is the national park, at the sea. So there's no problem us being in the middle of these conservation areas or nature parks so I think it's quite easy to see that at least our perspective, it's sustainable, right? No emissions, no emissions to air, no emissions to sea. Of course, we have one issue, which is waste, but no emissions. I'm talking about emissions and the climate and on the back is the power plants. In the front, you can see the operations or the constructions of where we put the operations of nuclear waste facilities. Now we are building on that. I will come back to the issue of waste later on. The reason I'm repeating this word sustainable is that now we have a political decision from the EU Parliament that nuclear power is not sustainable. There's about 760 people in the Parliament, if I remember correctly, and they decided nuclear power is not sustainable. Yes, go ahead.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit why you think that's the reason? And the second question I have is, of course, is there a connection between, the risks or the, benefits or whatever, the fact of having nuclear power plants and the countries where you have them?
Yes.
because again there might be differences in different countries, and this might be then reflected at European level.
Exactly.
What is the question?
Exactly. Yes. Of course, there's risks in these operations, but it's a matter of how big the risks are. Well, if we go to EU decision making, so that's a mess. That's a very difficult. There's so many steps in the decision making in the EU Parliament, in the EU, but basically this sustainability decision making goes that Commission makes the suggestions of the legislation, right? Commission is the so they suggested that we should have two categories in. We talk about actually financing of energy or investment. So sustainable and not sustainable. So the Commission agreed that it should be technology free. But then Parliament was working on that, and they decided they had actually there was a working group that it was called a scientific working group, but it was a heavily political group who came up with the suggestion that the waste issue is not solved, and that's the argument that nuclear is not sustainable. Waste issue was not solved, and that was the criteria. Of course, it's but then there's a third party in every decision. There's the Council, where are the member states. So there are three parties when you make a decision in the EU. There's the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council. And two of those say that nuclear is okay, and the Parliament says. And now they are putting these opinions together, and you have seen headlines that. So it's not clear yet what is the result of that. What is the compromise of that? So, but anyway, what we do here, we believe is sustainable, and about the waste. So we have actually solved that issue too. But put some more criteria of sustainability, because there are several aspects that you need to think. Right. You cannot just say that pick up one criteria, and so there's 4 criteria in this picture. So land area is, of course, if you need a huge amount of land, it's an issue, right? So there you can see that nuclear is good in that sense that it needs a lot of a small area. In this case, 4 square kilometers. Just one aspect. And then the one down in the left is if you look at the life cycle analysis, because people are saying that it takes so much time and so much energy to build the nuclear power plants that the emissions are, if you think of the life cycle, including the mining of the uranium, so it's not sustainable. But these are the figures from IPCC per kilowatt hour, how much CO2 is emitted. So for nuclear it's 12 grams, and for coal it's 820. So we are better than coal, that's for sure. And then you have this wind and hydro, and solar are also good for environment in this perspective. As you know, it's very hard to calculate this if you look at the life cycle. So of course, if you take one study, so it will come up with different number. But anyway, the range is, and this is IPCC. If of course is a valued source of information. And then on the down on the right is the material. How much materials do you need per kilowatt hour, per unit of energy? That's a relevant question, right? If you need all the materials, all the metals in the world, so it's not very sustainable. So, because metals, it means mining. So there's an environmental impact on mining too. So nuclear is good. solar panels are quite challenging in that sense. And the fourth criteria is the volume of spent fuel. So now I think most of you don't really think how much high-level waste we have, how much spent fuel do we have. It's not much. It's not much. So I did this graph today, and I believe my calculations are right. So this is the harbor of Rauma, and that's the size, how much fuel we produce during 60 years in our units 1 and 2. So the life cycle of those are 60 years, probably, maybe more. So it's 7 by 7 by 7, the amount of fuel that we produce. So if you have those blue sea containers, you put 3 of them, and that's it. That's the whole volume of high-level waste. So it's not a lot.
And then you're qualifying the waste with
Wait a second, just a second. I'm sorry, but this is for the...
Yes, I can repeat the questions also if needed. So.
I noticed that you're qualifying your comments with high-level waste.
Yes.
What is the quantity of other waste, and how dangerous is that?
So that's the spent fuel, which is high-level waste. Because it has the radiation levels go down very quickly in that waste too, but it will last for a very long time until it's the same as the bedrock. So then we need to look at for 100,000 years, so then we have medium level waste and low level wastes. So I don't know the lifetime figures, but it's not much really. It's about we put it in 2 silos basically. We have 2 silos in 60 meters, and they are half full now. And the height of the silos is 40 meters, and they are, I don't know, maybe 30 meters. So that's the amount of radioactive waste that we produce. And the high and low level waste, we have been putting that to final deposit already 20, 30 years. So we have a solution for that. And this is the latest thing that we are building on. Actually, we are the first in the world to have a solution for spent fuel. Yes?
Why do you take this 60 years spent fuel? Because the 4 nuclear reactors in Loviisa and Olkiluoto have been running for 40 years.
Yes. Well, this is the idea of the whole lifetime, how much they produce waste during the whole lifetime. They have been running for 40 years, and they will run for 60 years. And maybe Olkiluoto Turku 3, which is the best and the most modern nuclear power unit, it will run much longer. It's so well designed that lifetime is very long. So that's the idea. You put a lot of money in the beginning, lots of material, lots of concrete, but then you run it for 80 years or so. I don't know what's the final age of that, and you produce a huge amount of energy. As you know, we produce energy every year, 24/7, full power. Well, I'm saying here the nuclear is because it's not a solution for climate change. It's just one of those solutions. It's not surely the only one, but I'm arguing here that we think it's sustainable. Every industrial operations creates waste, right? And we are very responsible for our waste. And we have for example, we have the money. All the money collected needed to take care of the waste. It's a fund. In the ministry has a fund for the war, so there's no risk of our company going to bankruptcy. The money is there for the waste.
A question. Of course, while I somehow completely trust you that you are very responsible for the waste, I may, for example, have doubts that, I don't know, just to say a name, Italy might be equally responsible for the waste. I'm saying it because I'm Italian. So in a way, this again brings up the question of how do we regulate when we have different countries with different, perhaps, I don't know how to say, reliability, maybe, in handling with these issues.
Yes, exactly. It's when EU is deciding of this sustainability, so it's not just Finland. It's everybody has to be responsible. My point is that we are the leading country in the world. We are showing the way, and I'm sure everybody will follow. Actually, there's a EU legislation that every EU country has to make a national plan for the waste. So it's a directive. You need to have a plan. The implementation, which is taking a lot of time in EU countries and all over the world. So but basically it's not in my backyard issue it's a bit difficult to find a place where you put it because of the local population is resisting it. Yes.
One technical question more. This area needed for windmills.
Yes.
400 square miles. It's roughly 20 times 20 kilometers square. But it depends very much on the design and
Of the size of a turbine, yes.
Size of the mills, because
Yes.
the biggest ones begin to be, they produce something like 6 megawatts or
Yes, you're
7
right.
megawatts.
Yes.
So what is the basis for this calculation?
I haven't done the calculation. I did the calculation a few years ago, and then I used the size was, I think, 3 megawatts per unit. Of course, you need to know also what's the distance between units. And but anyway, it's just a rough figure that it takes lots of area to put wind power. And just I was in Brussels, and suddenly the Germans they don't build wind power anymore, which is amazing. Not, of course, they built some because they have been the leading country, and now suddenly it has basically stopped or reduced it quite dramatically. And one answer was that they have a regulation that you need 1 kilometer distance without no one living around the power plant. So you don't find these places to put it in Germany. You can put it offshore, yes, but then you have a problem of how to move the electricity down where the people live. If you want to build a new power line, everybody is resisting that. So there are issues also regarding renewables, and they are the winning technology, that's for sure. Wind power is the winning technology, but it has practical restrictions. Where to put it, how to move it, wind conditions, and what to do when the wind is not there. So we are complementary product sources of energy. All the clean energy is needed, that's obvious. So should we vote now that is nuclear sustainable or not? It's a bit more positive. It looks like I'm just promoting nuclear power here, but well, that's what I'm doing. So Fingrid is the company who's responsible for the Finnish network. Their slogan is that they keep the lights on in Finland. That's what they do. They are the transmission. They are in that sense they are neutral. They are not producing. They are not selling any. They are just taking care of the network. Not the local network. This is the high voltage network that I'm talking about. But that was his statements. It's this new nuclear power in Finland. It's good for the market. It's good for electricity users and good for environment. But then one technical comment to especially you, that he calls it a flywheel. Well, that stabilizes the system. But now we have this weather-dependent sources of energy, like wind and solar. So this kind of a heavy machine that when the nuclear power is, it rotates and stabilizes the system. So it's a good. We need both. That's the, I think, his point. So that's our slogan that we've been using for at least 1 year. This one investment is the biggest climate act in Finland, the greatest climate act. We thought it's kind of a bit provocative, but really that's a fact. It has a huge impact. I'll explain to you. This is not in. There's a web page. I don't have internet now on, so I cannot put it on. But it's a real-time internet page that you can see every country's situation. How clean is the production of electricity? So of course, green is good, and brown is bad. And as you can see, Baltic countries, Estonia is at this moment it was the worst place in Europe. They have this specific fuel that they are using, oil shale, or how do you call it? If you they burn it and make electricity. They burn 1 kilogram of that, you get half a kilogram of ash. So 50% of the weight is ash after you have burned it. So it's not good for environment in that sense either. And of course, lots of CO2. But how this system works, I'll just shortly explain it to you because it's important. Now, when we put this one nuclear power plant into use, it will immediately replace some other production, right? Because electricity is always produced as much as you consume it. Every second it has to be in balance, production and consumption, right? So when we put up this huge Olkiluoto 3 into net, so 1600 megawatts of some other production will stop. And who will stop? It's the system is very good in the European level that those who pollute most, they stop their production right away in that minute. Because we have this emission trading system. So if you put 1 ton of CO2 into the air, you need to pay. So the polluter is paying. So if you're using coal, you need to pay the coal and the emission you are putting into the air. And that's why the clean energy has always the priority. At least if you talk in a yearly, a bit longer perspective. Of course, there can be moments that this. So clean energy is always replacing the polluting energy. That's the system how the electricity market is working. You don't need any political decisions. It's built in the system. And for example, when we started in Finland, the power plants in Estonia will stop because they are the most polluting ones. And roughly we have calculated that one Olkiluoto 3, when it starts, it will reduce the emissions by 10 million tons per year, 10 million tons. And if you think of the emissions of Finland, it's 55 million, the emissions as a total. And this one unit is replacing 10 million. It's reducing 10 million tons. It's not happening in Finland, it's happening in this market somewhere. Replacing coal or oil shale or polluting component. So
I have a question. Why in this map, what is the difference with all the other, Sweden, all the green countries, and for example Finland?
Yes.
Why is it that they are green and Finland is yellow?
Well, typically France is And Sweden and Finland are using nuclear power, so that's their production is clean because they're using nuclear power, but also they're using renewables. We are using 45% renewables in Finland. Sweden is using about 50% renewables, 50% nuclear power. Norway is only renewables because they have so much hydropower, but
Basically what they're doing better, because obviously the green is doing better than us. It's because they're using more
which one?
the green countries in
Greens
a way.
are good. Those
Greens
who
are
have-
good. So green is better than Finland.
Yes,
no? When it comes
like
to
Spain
CO2.
has nuclear power, and you have renewables in Spain, right? So if you combine these two, you get results. And then you can do the German solution. You shut down. They have not shut down all of their nuclear power, but most of them. And they have replaced it with coal. So it's not good for environment. They haven't reduced their emissions at all during the 10 years.
What about Iceland then?
Iceland is hydro. Iceland is hydro. They just built hydropower there, and there's lots of factories in Iceland too. They have aluminum factories, for example, which is very energy intensive. So they built a factory there, and then hydro power, and that's their specialty. Well, it's not. It's good for environment in that sense.
Why the Netherlands is brown as the Poland with its all its coal?
This is not. This is a snapshot of one moment. So there can be reasons that at this point so this is not an annual average. This is a snapshot of one moment. So, but I don't know Netherlands situation. Maybe why?
They used to burn beef.
Yeah, I don't think not anymore. So, but if you combine renewables and nuclear power, so you can be really green, and that's what Finland is doing, and that's what few countries are doing. But of course, you can do it with renewables, but it seems to take quite a lot of time. How big is the Olkiluoto 3? Just an example that there's a lot of it's a big unit. You can heat quite many houses or departments. You can have 3.6 million electric cars with one nuclear power unit. So if we want to change into electric cars, it's not the electricity is not an issue. We can easily make more, but the electric cars are quite expensive today. So that's the problem, that we need to get them cheaper, and then we have solved the traffic, at least if you talk about personal vehicles. And emission trading system, which is not very well known. We have had this system from 2005. It's a very good system. The problem is that with this system, you don't need to do any more political decisions. It's there, and that's difficult for the politicians. They want to make decisions every year, some new decision. But they made one decision, one system, which is emission trading system, and this will lead to almost zero emissions in the future. And this is a market-oriented system, no political involvement. It means that the industry and the power producers are in this system, and the European industry has a cap. How much can we emit? That's the total amount of megatons of CO2. So emissions in power production, emissions in the energy-intensive industry, they will go down automatically. They have been going down, and they will go down. And now the political discussion is, when the new commission has started, should we get a bit tougher, quicker the red line? Should we go in that? Because we have decided to go with the reduction of 1.74% per year. So we will probably go to 2.2 or a bit more ambitious. But as you can see, the result is quite nice if you compare to the level we were when we started. And I give you one practical example. What does it mean? Well, we just say that Germany is bad in that sense that they are still polluting, but they are still, Europe, the whole Europe is still under that cap. And for example, one argument that you hear quite often that if we will move to electric cars, it's not good because this electricity is not clean, right? Yeah, it's not good because the electricity is not clean. It should be considered, but it's not true. If you would put 1 million cars or 10 million or 100 million electric cars into Europe, there's no additional emissions. Not a single ton of additional emissions from charging those electric cars. Of course, manufacturing these batteries and that's causing emissions, but charging those 100 million electric cars does not add any emissions in Europe. That's very hard to believe, but it is true. Because there's a cap for the industry. But if there's a huge demand of new electricity, like because of electric cars, so the emissions, the price of CO2 will rise, right? That's the so-called market mechanism. Now it's about 25 euros per ton, but if there's a need for electricity and and that's the price of CO2 will guide the investments into clean energy. So that's why the electric cars are very good, and hopefully they will solve this problem of how to get into clean traffic. Well, I skip that one. Just to show, when I say that we have a solution for waste, getting back to the waste issue, that it's a huge work that we have done. We have done actually 40 years of R&D work. This industry doesn't do anything quickly. There's a huge R&D work behind this before we go into construction phase. So we started at 1980, and now we've done our homework. And now we are in the construction phase, which is in the middle, so implementation of this. And that takes about 10 years. And then we'll start putting the used fuel down to the bedrock, and that will take 100 years. So it's also a long process, because we are creating new waste, and there's some lead times before we put it down to the bedrock for final deposit. So the thing is now when we're talking about other European countries, so the homework is now done. What is it needed to make it safe? So we've done it. The Swedes have done this together with us. The French have done it, their homework. And so things are moving, but we are the first in the world to do this. And of course, it's for our reputation in Finland. It's very, very good to show it. And that's the technical concept. How do we do it? We put it in the bedrock down to 430 meters. It's a very stable environment. The Finnish bedrock is about 1.9 billion years old, it has been the same, stable for 1.9 billion years. So we have about 15 geologists working for us, and when they talk about the history and the years, so they talk about hundreds of millions of years and billions of years, so they have a bit different perspective. So, and we are of course modeling what will happen in the future too. But there are, in nuclear business, we call this multi-barriers. We have always things, one thing can go wrong and nothing happens, and the second thing can go wrong and nothing still happens. There's no emissions to surrounding environment. The same principle is followed here. There's several barriers that the radioactivity is not going to the environment.
I have a question. And what about those countries where there is, for example, high risk of seismic activity? It's not in Finland, of course, but there are countries where it might be more difficult. I mean, there are ways of somehow doing these things in a way that is safe from...
Yes. So the site selection is of course a major decision. But what I understood, for example, in Japan, there are sites. It's a long country. They are not all in the seismic critical places. So it's possible to find a place also. But that's what I've heard from Japan, but don't know really more detail. But it seems to be that there are places. In France, they don't have this kind of a bedrock. They put it in a clay, which is actually quite good, because it's if something happens around it, clay is protecting it. These containers, these capsules, quite nicely.
Is this just for Olkiluoto or other?
Yeah, that's for Olkiluoto and for Loviisa. We have currently two nuclear companies in Finland, and but we are a private company, and this Posiva company who's doing the job is a co-owned. There's two owners in that company. Fortuma and TVO is the owners of Posiva. So it's our money that we have put into the R&D, and now we are going into in the construction phase. We put about 500 million euros into construction, and then we continue. So there's this is all private money. It's on our, if you think of the business risks, so it's our money and our risks. Also, when we invest into new nuclear power, so there's no subsidies, no support from the government, no financial support from the government.
Please tell us what were the main reasons that the depth was selected 500 meters. Had 100 meters been enough, because the latest ice age, it severed something like 10 or 20 meters of the rock, not more.
So the depth is 430 meters, which is, if you go down there and there's 430 meters of bedrock above you, so you can really imagine that this is a quite safe place, because it has been the same for almost 2 billion years. Why we go as far as to maximize the safety. We go down as low to maximize the safety. So you improve the safety, but then there's the limit. If you go further down, the water is more salty, for example, and the risk of corrosion is bigger. So deeper than that, there's no use to go. But
why not 200 meters have been enough?
Well, if you think of the radiation, 1 meter of bedrock is enough to prevent the radiation. But it's the marginals that the marginals are so big in this business. So it's not a big deal to go 200 meters more. It's just digging the driveway. It will cost something, but maximize the safety. So.
I have another question. That is okay, but in principle, aren't these because I guess that the location is known, is public where this thing is, but aren't they possible? I don't know, military targets. If someone wants to, attack, for example, wouldn't be possible to create harm to the country? Obviously, in this way, by.
Yes. Well, of course. When you put it so down, it's not easily accessible, because there's just one.
Underwater, or, I don't know.
It's not. We don't go underwater. So
okay.
basically, if you want to dig down there, it takes 2 years to go down there, or 5 years to go down in 400. So if somebody would be digging, we would notice. And then, for example, we have these vertical tunnels. They are about 300 meters long. That we put this material, these canisters down. So we put a huge concrete plug, in the end of the tunnel. So you cannot really. It's very difficult to break that. And then in the end, we will fill all the tunnels. It's a 5 kilometers way drive down to the 430 meters. So we will close that tunnel too. So. And why would you go there and get there? I don't see any reason. It's not. There's no use for that kind of a material. It's a problem if you.
Yeah, just to say a short thing. It's 5 kilometers filled tunnel.
Yes.
In the bedrock. Then there's the concrete plug that you have to breach.
Yes.
And the full final disposal tunnel you have to dig out. And still you haven't got to the nuclear fuel capsules, which you have to breach.
Seems quite safe. Okay.
The capsule is quite heavy and not very handy to. How would you take it out? So it's, yep. Yep.
Is this material also accounted for in the previous graph that you had, the material throughput?
Yes, on the life cycle analysis. Yeah, you start from the mine, from where you need the metals and where you need the uranium, and then you include this kind of energy you needed for final deposit and the material you need for final deposit. So actually the Swedes were calculating their own numbers, because of course it's a bit company specific, and they came up with the number 5 grams, which is about half of the figure I showed you. So, but anyway, it's so small that when you move from coal to nuclear or coal to renewables, you get from 800 to 20 or 12. So it's for environment, it's a.
Also the concrete.
Huh?
The amount of concrete also.
Yeah, the amount of concrete is in there. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, concrete is creating emissions. Yes, that's a problematic industry. Yeah, the Olkiluoto 3, it's a big one. It's about 10 size of 10 parliament houses, around 1 million cubic meters, and 30% of the volume is concrete. So it's a lot of concrete in that building. But on the other hand, it will last so long that it's important that the construction is long-lasting. Okay. Yes.
One is this designed only for Finnish nuclear waste, or are you also selling this for other countries? And the second one is, what was the highest source of risk that was taken into account to say the side?
Yes.
Was it natural disasters, terrorist attacks, or I don't know? If there is one that can be.
So this is applicable for example, we could take care of the waste of course, from other power plants. But Finnish legislation is forbids that we are not able to export or import any nuclear fuel. So we just take care of our own fuel and that's it. And of the risks, most of the R&D work is done around corrosion. They study where the water is moving. Is it possible that the water gets in touch with the radioactive material, with the uranium? And then could it go back up to the surface of the... but that's why we have the copper canister, which doesn't rust. It's and then there's this bentonite clay around we prevent the water to touch the copper canister. And if it touches the copper canister, it doesn't get rust. It lasts, and then so there's multi barriers against the water, and so I would say that's the main R&D work that we have done. But there's many more things, of course.
I'm just curious, like, how does this differ from what, say, the Americans have been doing when they put their waste in the desert? Like, how is this?
Yeah, the Americans it's a kind of a sad story because they have, of course, all over the world, the nuclear fuel is in temporary storages now. It's a safe place, but it's not a final solution. They have a storage in US. And then they put a lot of money to Yucca Mountain, which would be a very good, technically a very good place. But then some regional or political issues, so the project was stopped. So now the problem in the world is to find a place.
Wouldn't it be, okay, it's a bit weird question, but let's say Finland is particularly has this fact of being not subjected to earthquakes, having a stable place, and also having really extremely good technology, right? You're saying we are first in the world for many things.
Yes.
So wouldn't it be some sort of business opportunity? You know, you could sell this. So people would pay other countries to even a lot. You could and you could provide a service of storing in a safe way this waste.
No, it's a very good question. Actually, we have a company who is selling these services. We have we are selling it to 10 countries today. So suddenly Finland is, and it's not just us, it's a so-called cluster where the VTTs and all the companies in Finland are involved in those know-how exports. So yes, we have a solution. We have huge amount of people coming into Finland, and there's consultation, there's know-how that we are selling. So there is a potential, yeah. We are doing it already.
Really thinking in terms of, importing waste. I mean, it sounds horrible, like importing the waste here. Yes. But okay, if you have a place and if you have the know-how, and it could be, then, I mean, okay, I expect that there might be some limitations, but still, I mean, it is
but
if it's safe, it's safe.
I said, it's not. Law is prohibiting.
The law is prohibiting, but let's say in case in the future, if it might be a source of or a need or a source of income.
But it will create, I think it will create quite a lot of discussions that now we have a high acceptability. And there's an impact, there's a correlation that we don't want that kind of a discussion going on. We just have a solutions for Finns and we take care of our waste, and we are looking all over. Of course, there's a lot of cooperation between the nuclear companies and politicians, and so we are looking for solutions, but local solutions mainly. There might be some common solutions within smaller countries, yes, but we are not. I don't see it as a future.
Also, if you think about it, Finland is so very. Not very densely populated, so there is actually a lot of space and very few people.
We had some Australians who were visiting us. They had a big plan of being putting down the nuclear waste to Australia, because there's lots of wasteland there and stable bedrock. But I haven't heard about that lately. So maybe there were some political issues that it didn't go further, but it could happen in some other country that they will give these services. Yeah, you're right. Sure. That's the building that we are not now building. So that building does not exist there. It will take. That's where the situation was during the summer. So not yet done. I have few more things about the. Do you think you can still? Are you willing to talk a little bit more about the climate change? That's the book I'm referring. It's a very good one. It's the best one available. It comes out every year. It collects all the data from the national ministries. So I call it a fact. A very good source of what is happening within energy and within climate change. But it's a bit sad story. Well, maybe I don't read it through that, but the headline is that energy world is marked by a series of deep disparities. That was their message, because this was announced just 2 months ago. They were talking about disparities. We should make a change, but you don't really see it. So they were putting a hard pressure to the political decision making. And this is the figure I'm typically, when I get visitors, I show this, that you all know that we had this Kyoto Agreement. Do you remember when was that Kyoto, the first climate agreement? When was that? Do you know? Around more than 20 years ago. That was 1997. We had the first climate agreement. And if you look at the numbers, on the bottom, the fossil fuel share year 2000 was 80% in the world. Now I talk about energy. And now where we are today, this is the last figure, because it takes a time to collect the data. So now we are in 81%. So where's the progress? And then the CO2 emissions from 23 gigatons to 33. So that's there's no progress. Although we have this system of climate change negotiations for 22 years. But of course, now we are in a different level. And then if you find, I don't have a pointer, but if you look at the sustainable development, that's where the climate change is tackled. Look at the numbers. We can go down to 58% of fossil fuels, but look at the numbers that which ones are important. Renewables are growing. They are very important in the sustainable development scenario. And nuclear is there. Nuclear is not surely as big as renewables together, but it's about the same as bioenergy and much bigger than hydro, and about the same as wind and solar, I would say, roughly. But that is not happening. They have these 3 scenarios that they put: stated policies and current policies and sustainable. Stated is it includes the decisions that the government have made, so concrete decisions. And no, which one is? And the current policies is that they have a goal, or they have a program for the future, but they have not implemented that yet. That is not enough, and the sustainable is the one. So that's the with the easy to read, the same with the graphs. So things are not looking very well, but if we can make the turn, there's 20 years. We need to start it now. So we will not get rid of coal and gas in 2040, no way, but we can reduce the current situation. I just read from Financial Times that the Chinese, they seems to be reducing use of coal, but now the latest news was that they are building or planning 150 gigawatts of new nuclear power, new coal power. Well, of course, it's an abstract figure, but I calculated that if when they will start, they will pollute 30 or 40 times more than the Finnish total emissions are. These new coal power plants that they are just now building. So China is a very difficult case because they have such a huge amount of electricity. They are building about 100 nuclear power plants, they will be the biggest in the world, nuclear power. But anyway, they will build hundreds of new coal power plants, which is not sustainable, of course. What will happen to those? Because in 2040, there's no room for Chinese coal. And just to repeat that these are the winning technologies, of course. It's not nuclear. Nuclear has a role, but these are the winning technologies. Solar, wind are booming in the world because the price of they are cheap, huge. There's too many figures now. I think this is the last slide, which is just a topic that the nuclear industry is now talking. We have this new technology just coming, which is called small SMR, small modular reactors. As you know, it's quite expensive and time-consuming to build big nuclear power plants. We have been building Olkiluoto 3 for 15 years, or 14 years so far, and it will be running next year. So construction time is 15 years, and it's very expensive. Our cost is 5.5 billion euros, but that's for one unit. But this is the future, to build smaller ones, build them in factory, and bring them at site. And you can have several of those in a row. And for example, Chinese are working on that, and they are one of the things that they are looking is that could they put this into a coal power plant? Because they are burning coal there, right? Then it is producing steam, and then they have a huge turbine where a generator, and then there's power lines. So this infra is ready, but if they just move this boiler from burning coal and put a small nuclear reactor into it, the whole infra could be used, and you can make a huge impact on the emissions. Because if you build a new coal power plant, so everything is brand new, and it's a waste if you cannot use it anymore. Stranded cost, as how is it called? So there can be solutions that have a huge impact, and Chinese, they have so much money on this R&D work. because it's a centralized system. They have the money, develop new technologies. This kind of a technology, it's expensive to develop, so you need billions of euros.
I have a question, but would it be possible or imaginable that you could have something like small modular reactor that is so safe that you can have it, I mean, I'm not saying at home, but let's say in a town. You have one in Turku, one in Canada, they have...
your question is very good again, exactly. Like in Turku, the city council, the members of city council have suggested that we should study this for district heating, for heating Turku. And then you would put it close to Turku, somewhere here in the city, at least close. But you put it under surface, of course, into the bedrock, which is a very good place if you think of risks that you have. So yes, for heat, you can do heating with this quite high. So that's maybe the most promising, because changing the heating is not solved. How do you heat Turku city? How do you heat Helsinki in the future? Burning is not very, in the long term, burning is not a solution. Because when you burn, you create CO2. It can be, you create CO2. But of course, this is the first units are just about to run, 2021, and one is 2019. So this technology is not there yet. It's just about to start, the first ones, and so the commercialization is going on. And hopefully there will be some. But this is all over the world, one new thing. I think that was my story. I didn't check the time, how long did it take, but thanks for your...
We had, it's more than 1 hour, but we had many questions, and it was very nice, but hopefully we will also have more. But I leave you to conclude.
Thank you for your interest. Yep.
Thank you.
So where does the uranium...
Yeah, I can repeat the question there about where does the uranium come from? You find uranium all over the world, so the big producers are biggest producers are Kazakhstan is the biggest one in the world, Australia and Canada. So yes, the big ones are those 3 countries. Yes, but we will have one. For example, in Talvivaara in Finland, there will be. They are about to get the license to start taking the uranium from the Talvivaara mine. It's there, but it's just they don't have the permit yet to extract it. So it's like in Australia, it's a mine, and the uranium is a side product from the mine. So like in Talvivaara, the main metals are nickel, but the side product is uranium, and you can, if you extract that, it's actually good for the environment. It's a kind of a cleaning process when you take out the heavy metals.
Can I ask another question? Just quickly.
Yeah.
Do you think the share is good now, or do you think there should be more nuclear power in Finland?
No, we are going to the Swedish situation that has been optimal for years. I think it's 50% renewables and 50 nuclear. It's optimal because we do the base load all year round, 24/7, and then you put the renewables on top. Of course, you can have more renewables, but we haven't seen the Germany is in somewhere in, I don't think 40-45% renewables, but it's weather dependent, so it creates a bit challenging how to back up these weather dependent production sources. So nuclear on the bottom, and as you know, we have lots of industry who are running 24/7, huge power pulp mills and metal factories. And also data centers today, they use a huge amounts of electricity. So it's good to have this baseload production to secure the source of electricity.
How about fusion power? Do you know about that?
The SMRs are more close technology, and the fusion we've been saying always that it's 40 years in front of us, and it has been moving. So it's not commercializing. Of course, EU is putting a lot of money in the research project in ITER, but I think we need to have some more before that is available.
So let's continue smoothly with the questions. Yes.
So after Olkiluoto 3 begins its operation, which part of Finnish consumption is produced by nuclear power after that?
We will produce 30%, and then we will have Loviisa, which is 10%. So we will be in 40. Yes. And the renewables are 50 in Finland almost. So the clean energy is very close to 90% in Finland after Olkiluoto 3. So the electricity that comes from the plug, it's very clean.
Is that of production or consumption?
Of production, yes. We still need to import. We still need to import. Today we import about 22%, but we still need to import. We are not self-sufficient in annual level.
Where do imports come from?
Imports, they used to come from Russia. Earlier days, some is coming from Russia, but mainly from Sweden and Norway.
Yes, I'd like to ask that how vulnerable this system is in a time of crisis or outside threat, because it seems to be quite safe in a stable situation in a time of peace, but this is Finland.
Yes. Well, yes. When we talk about safety, we mean nuclear safety, and then we talk about security, which is the risks that are coming outside from us. And for example, the Olkiluoto 3 now is protected from airplane crash. If there's the biggest jumbo jet is hitting it, so it will last it. That's the new requirement in the world after 9/11. But the other risks that you were talking about, I cannot really talk about those. They are classified information. So you need to put the camera on.
Come on, tell us something. No, I'm joking.
But of course, that's part of the job that
You have some plans and safety.
Yes, of course. We have lots of course, and we cooperate with the officials, and of course it's a tradition for decades and we share the experiences of all kinds of happenings. Everything that is happening in some nuclear power plant, the information is shared to others. So it's always we learn from each other, and there's lots of
Okay, so more questions there, and then.
Just a couple of questions about the SMRs. So when you show it on the slide, it looks nice, like quite a small compact unit, but then you talked earlier about the volume of concrete you have to have for your plant. How does that factor in? Like if you're thinking about plugging this into district heating or into a coal plant in China, will you have to build a lot more infrastructure to make that secure?
Yes. I haven't seen any pictures but the idea is, I would say it's like that you put it underground and then you create steam, which is not radio, it's just steam. You bring the steam into the turbine. So you would not have it on ground like the coal power plant. Yeah. It's kind of like you could compare to geothermal power plant. Like Iceland is full of those that they just take the hot water from the ground and they create heat or electricity. So that's the SMR. So yes, but you need a lot of cooling water also. Not just the American model of it's called new scale SMR. It's like an airplane. The size is like an airplane, about 30 meters long and I don't know, 5-6 meters diameter. So that's the size of a small SMR.
So we're talking about something that's quite a bit bigger than, say, the stuff that they would have sent into space. These like small kind of, almost like a nuclear battery or something. Like some of the space stations had these nuclear plants, but they were quite small.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can have small ones, but of course there's some economics of scale making it bigger. So currently the sizes SMRs are less than 300 megawatts. That's the limit, but it can be. The heat load here is, I don't know, a few hundred megawatts that you need here in Turku, for example. So maybe 500 megawatts here in Turku would be needed for heating.
And anything you send into space, you don't expect to last
Pardon
so
me?
long. Anything you send into space, you don't expect to last so long. So that's not a concern. You don't need to worry.
Yeah.
So it will be gone. So.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, the last one was just when you're talking about China, and you mentioned Chernobyl. There's also this thing, they don't have this system like a ETS system, it's much more centralized. So there is always this, is there a concern in the industry about political interference being an issue with China going so heavily into nuclear?
Concern of...
potential, not something on a Chernobyl scale, but that there could be political interference because, one of the things is that not just that they were running the reactor badly, but they completely politically mishandled the response to the reactor.
Well, just to give you an example, Chinese have been building 2 of those sister reactors. They are called EPRs. Exactly the same reactors that we built. And they were built together with the Chinese and the French. So the level of, it's a copy. It's a very modern, very safe power plant. So they have a really high standards of safety in China. So, and yeah, so that's what we have been seeing, because we visit that power plant. So it's a learning process. We learn from each other. The 2 units in Taishan, and so they come here and they ask what issues have been coming up, and we go there and make the same question. So it's as I said, the industry is very open for learning.
Yes. Did you say that you release the cooling water into the sea?
Pardon me?
Did you say that you release the water you use to cool into the sea?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, can I ask how warm is it when you release it and how much per day?
Yeah, we take it from this side, as you can see here, and it will warm up 10 degrees. So it depends how cold it is. Like today it's maybe 2 degrees, and when it goes out it's 12 degrees. It's not warm, but it's warmer.
And how much?
10 degrees warmer.
No, I'm sorry, I meant like cubic meters or...
Oh, for cooling
liters.
we need today about 70 cubic meters per second, and it will go up more than 100 when Olkiluoto 3 will be 100 cubic meters per second water. So just cooling water going through the system. Of course, there's no radioactivity, nothing is happening to the water. It just flows through.
Yeah, it's okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yes. It's a small river that the outlet channel. And the ice is not, there's no ice in front of the power plants in the winter, so that's the environmental impact that we have, that there's no ice. And
can you express that number in percentage? How much is lost heat into the sea compared to the electricity what is produced?
Yes.
The capacity, is it something like 800 megawatts per
yes,
reactor?
Because for safety reasons we don't have high temperatures. The efficiency is not very high compared to the traditional power plant. The Olkiluoto 3 the efficiency is 37%. So we use of the energy 37%. So it means 63% goes to the water, to the sea. So we are using only 1/3 of the energy we produce, Yeah, we lose a lot, but as I said, it's not really very warm water, so it's hard to find any use for the water which is 12 degrees warm into winter. We could heat the cities, but there's no cities around. We are quite far away from. If we would draw a pipeline to Turku, it would be very expensive. It's much easier that we make the electricity and bring it here, and you build a heat pump in Turku.
It is so safe that it could be in the city or center of city.
There's a Mars, as we talked. So there's a Mars in the future. So, but that's what historically they were put in the remote places, and we need a lot of cooling water. So it's a very good place, and we need a good network to connect. So that's why we are there. It's a good place.
There?
Yes, I have a question, but if you just allow.
There's a question behind me? No. You have a question. You have a question. Okay.
Okay, if you consider, that nuclear power could be a sustainable energy source against climate change, so we have to ask about the uranium, so availability of uranium in the world.
Yes.
What could be said about that? So how much could be produced uranium in the world? I don't think about only Finland, but if
yes.
people start to construct nuclear plants
exactly.
more and more.
Yeah. As I said, uranium is there's a lot of uranium in the ground, and the current resources are for 100 years of production in this level of nuclear power. Present level, yes. But whenever the uranium price goes up, there's lots of people start to look for uranium. Like they have been in Finland, these companies looking for uranium mines. There is uranium in Finland, but it's a matter of what is the price level. And you could, and the price of uranium is quite small compared to the production price. So it's not very significant if part of the cost. So there is uranium available to increase the production. Good.
Okay, so let's see if there is one more question there.
So how about this thorium-based fuel for nuclear power?
Yes.
Could you say more, because I just read
very shortly, about thorium. For example, Norwegians were interested about that. It's kind of you can replace uranium with thorium. It's a source of fuel, and it's technically possible. Norwegians, they have lots of thorium, so they were looking into this more a few years back, but now it's quiet. Nobody's really working with thorium reactors. But it's just because there's uranium available, there's no need to change but haven't heard much about that in the recent years.
Okay, I do have one question that I must ask, and I will have this. I will take this privilege. So, is there any, as far as you know, nuclear power plant, if you consider all over the world, that you would consider unsafe now? Is there any actual risk somewhere in the world, not in Finland, but somewhere?
Of course, there are differences. Like the Chernobyl, it's called the Chernobyl type of reactor, which was not very cleverly designed. So there are still few reactors running in Russia.
Are the same as those?
Same as Chernobyl, yes.
Like are they
but
far from here?
If you look at the movie, the reason for that accident was not technical. It was just stupid behavior, stupid Russian behavior.
But this is the point. I mean, this will not change. I assume that the stupid behavior is always a risk. I mean, I don't know.
But there has been a huge amount of work around the safety in Russia too. Like the Finnish regulator and actually our company has been having common training with the Russian power plants, and so there's change of information, and of course they have reacted after Chernobyl a lot in Russia. So it was a catastrophe for them also. So So you just have to have a qualified staff, and you need to follow the instructions. So the level of safety have been going up quite significantly, also with those reactors. But and they will be closed quite soon. These few ones that are still running.
Okay. Yes.
Related to that, so for instance, in Fukushima, I guess the issue wasn't the reactor itself, right? It was in these like generators for the.
Yes, exactly.
So I mean, also those things are improving somehow the. So all the accessories that can potentially fail because.
Yeah, you need to look at film, but they what they did in Chernobyl, they did the tests, and they just manually took all the safety systems out of function. There was an order that put them out of function, and we'll make this test. And then the chain reaction behaved unexpectedly, and the material that was in the power plant was graphite, which burns. So there was a combination of stupid behavior and putting all safety systems off to make a test. And then it was delayed that there were no competent persons enough during the test because somebody decided to delay it. So there are issues that is easily seen that it's not, this kind of a behavior is not acceptable, and it's not today. It's not today. Today is not. Things have changed also in Russia.
Okay, as much as I would like to continue the discussion, I have to close it because we are, it's now more than 1.5 hours, but this clearly tells, no, actually, this is an obvious clear sign of the extreme success of your talk. And so the fact that, as always, the fact that there are so many questions, it means that there is a lot of interest and that there is a very clear presentation. So for this reason, I would like to thank you again, and before the I have to say that probably we'll stay here maybe at half an hour, 20 minutes. Sure. So if you, as usual, in the spirit of the Science Cafe, if you want to have some questions, not publicly, but maybe in Finnish, our speaker will be around. It's been really a pleasure. Thank you so much for your presentation. And now the applause of all the Science Cafe people.
It was a pleasure to be here. It was a pleasure to be here.
We are very happy. Of course, I have even more questions, but I couldn't stop asking. It's good.
Okay.
It's very interesting. We will give you just some practical information before I leave you. Maybe people ask things, but I will be around anyway.